surface. So when I don't like what I see in the mirror, I learn to look past the surface.
You've got 4 separate probation violation matters that are before the court.
Substance abuse component, mental health component, anger management component.
Put a certain stand, you keep up, that you're trying to end up red.
Went to jail most recently for failing to pay a reported $400,000 in child support.
It's just relevant, factions of my life that, it just falls into place.
All right, folks, let's delve into a story that's as raw as it gets. We're talking about Earl Simmons, but you probably know him better as DMX. Now, DMX wasn't just another rapper from the streets of New York. He was a legend, a figure whose presence turned the city upside down.
Rapper DMX will be spending the next 6 months in jail for violating his probation, and a judge has also ordered him to undergo a mental health evaluation.
Here's the kicker. DMX wasn't just about music. He was a reflection of the struggles and chaos of his environment. Growing up in the tough streets, he faced challenges that most of us can't even imagine. He hustled, he fought, and he survived. But underneath it all, he battled demons, addiction, poverty, and despair. But let me tell you, DMX wasn't just some troubled youth. He was tough as nails. This guy would take on anyone, anywhere. Gangs, organizations, you name it. He wasn't afraid of anyone. He was a lone wolf, never part of any gang, yet he commanded respect like no other. And that's what makes this story so compelling. DMX wasn't just a rapper, he was a force of nature. He brought chaos to the streets of New York like no other, leaving a mark that will never be forgotten. So buckle up, because we're about to take a journey into the life and times of DMX, a man who turned New York City into his own personal battleground. Earl Simmons, known as DMX on the streets, was born on December 18, 1970, in Mount Vernon, New York. He grew up in a tough neighborhood where life wasn't easy. His parents were young and struggled to take care of him and his siblings. His dad tried to make ends meet by selling his paintings, but it wasn't enough. From a young age, DMX faced hardships. His mom was sometimes violent towards him, and he had health issues like asthma. Despite being raised as a Jehovah's Witness, he drifted away from religion after a bad accident. Life took a turn for the worse when he was sent to live with relatives because of his mom's abuse. At just 10 years old, he was kicked out of school and ended up in a group home. He later returned to Yonkers, where he slept in empty storage bins and made friends with stray dogs. School wasn't easy for DMX. He struggled with his grades and couldn't finish his track and field team schedule. With no money and no support, he resorted to stealing from other kids just to survive. He did whatever it took to get food, clothes, and even a collar and harness for his dog.
He really cared about was his dog that he had. That was like his real best friend. You know what I'm saying? So all he really cared about was dogs.
Desperate times called for desperate measures, and DMX turned to carjacking to make ends meet. He was caught up in a cycle of violence and crime that seemed impossible to escape. DMX was in jail more than 30 times throughout his lifetime for various offenses, including criminal possession of a weapon, robbery, assault, carjacking, animal cruelty, reckless driving, driving under the influence, unlicensed driving, drug possession, probation violation, failure to pay child support, pretending to be a federal agent, and tax evasion. DMX was first sent to prison in 1986 after stealing a dog from a junkyard. He served a few months in the juvenile unit of Woodfield Prison in Valhalla, New York. Later that year, he was sentenced to 2 years for another crime and sent to the Industry Institution in upstate New York. However, in December 1986, just a few days after starting his sentence, he and his cellmate successfully escaped the prison, and DMX returned home until his mother forced him to turn himself in and finish his sentence, which he did at the McCormick Juvenile Detention Center in Brooktondale, New York. Simmons was sent to prison again in 1988 for carjacking and was later moved to a higher security prison after attempting to extort a fellow inmate for drugs. He was released in the summer of 1988. Back in 1999, the cops showed up at DMX's doorstep in Fort Lee. They were on a mission to search his place. And guess what? DMX didn't put up a fight. He surrendered himself because they found some weapons at his crib. Yep, you heard it right. He had some serious trouble with the law, but that wasn't the end of it. DMX had a thing for pit bulls, and not in a good way, leading to animal cruelty charges. They found a bunch of them at his other house in Teaneck, New Jersey, in pretty bad shape. The law came down hard on him for that too, but he managed to wriggle out of it with some community service and public service announcements. He got off with a slap on the wrist after agreeing to record some messages for an animal rights group. DMX had a habit of getting into trouble with the law. In 2000, he spent 15 days in jail for having marijuana. But did he learn his lesson? Nope. The next year, he got caught driving without a license and with more marijuana. Instead of learning his lesson, he threw things at prison guards, landing him in even more trouble. Things kept spiraling out of control for DMX. He faced a slew of charges in 2002 in New Jersey, including animal cruelty and drug possession. He managed to avoid serious punishment by making some promises and starring in some public service announcements. But trouble seemed to follow DMX wherever he went. In 2004, he got arrested at an airport in New York. The list of charges was long: coke possession, pretending to be a federal agent, and even trying to steal a car. Despite his attempts to wriggle out of it, he ended up pleading guilty and violating his parole. Jail became a second home for DMX. In 2005, he was sentenced to 70 days behind bars for breaking his parole. Even when he got out, he couldn't stay out of trouble. His home got raided for animal cruelty in 2007, and he got caught up in more drug and animal cruelty charges in 2008. But DMX just couldn't stay out of trouble. Every time he turned around, there he was, back in cuffs. Whether it was drugs, driving like a maniac, or not paying child support, he just couldn't seem to keep his nose clean. DMX's life was like a roller coaster. He'd get arrested, serve some time, then find himself back in trouble again. In 2010, he got out of jail, hoping to turn his life around. They even filmed a TV show about it, but it never got off the ground. Just 3 weeks later, he was back in handcuffs, facing reckless driving charges. The years went by, but DMX couldn't seem to shake off his troubles. In 2013, he got arrested twice in South Carolina for driving without a license and under the influence of alcohol. It seemed like every time he got out of jail, he ended up right back in there. Even accusations of robbery and missing court hearings couldn't slow him down. In 2015, he found himself behind bars again, this time for not paying child support. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse, he got hit with federal tax fraud charges in 2017. DMX pleaded guilty, but even that didn't stop his downward spiral. He ended up back in jail after leaving a drug treatment program. The judge sentenced him to a year in prison and ordered him to pay back millions of dollars to the government. Now let's delve into his music career. Earl got his start in the music scene beatboxing for a rapper Khaled Reedy Ron. They did small gigs together, with Ron rapping and DMX providing the beats and hype. But soon enough, DMX felt like Ron was hogging the spotlight. So he decided to step up and start rapping himself. That's when he took on the name DMX, which stood for Divine Master of the Unknown, or sometimes Darkman X. Life wasn't easy for DMX. He had some run-ins with the law and even spent time in prison for carjacking, as mentioned earlier, but even behind bars, he was hustling. He spent his time writing rhymes and battling other inmates. He had a unique style called Spellbound, where he spelled out each word letter by letter. It was something nobody had seen before. Then, in 1991, DMX got his big break when he appeared on the Stretch Armstrong and Bobbito show. People started noticing him, and he got featured in a column called Unsigned Hype in a magazine called The Source. That's when he caught the attention of a record label called Rough Riders Entertainment. But DMX's journey to the top wasn't smooth. He signed with Columbia Records, but things didn't go as planned. His debut single, Born Loser, didn't make waves, failing to meet commercial projections and not reaching any music charts. He was then terminated from his contract with Rough House, and he ended up parting ways with the label. Death Row Records even tried to sign him, but that didn't work out either, and became an independent artist. It wasn't until 1997 that things started looking up. His friend Irv Gotti helped him land a deal with Def Jam Recordings. That's when DMX's career really took off. DMX recorded tracks from April 1997 to January 1998 for his debut album. During this time, his guest appearances on Maze's singles 24 Hearses to Live and Take What's Yours, The Lox's single Money, Power, and Respect, and Def Jam label mate LL Cool J's single 4321 created a strong buzz for his upcoming album. In February 1998, he released his debut major label single Get At Me Dog on Def Jam Recordings. The single received an RIAA certification of gold. His first major label album, It's Dark and Hell Is Hot, which included the single Rough Riders Anthem, was then released in May 1998. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart in the US and sold over 5 million copies. In December 1998, he released his album Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and went multi-platinum. DMX became the only rapper alive to have his first 2 consecutive #1 Billboard 200 albums within a 1-year period, 7 months by calculation, and the first since Tupac Shakur. DMX's record would later be surpassed 2 different times in 2020 by Youngboy Never Broke Again, who made the #1 position with 2 albums in 6 months, a month down by proxy, making it the fastest, and also had 3 #1 albums in 10 months between 2019 and 2020, also beating another Billboard record by DMX, involving a quantity of #1 rap albums within a year. He released his 3rd album, And Then There Was X, on December 21, 1999. It was his 3rd album to debut at #1 on the Billboard 200. Its most popular single, Party Up, Up in Here, became his first top 10 hit on the R&B charts and was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Rap Solo Performance at the 2001 Grammy Awards. The album was certified 6 times platinum and was also nominated for Best Rap Album at the 2001 Grammy Awards. In 2000, DMX also made a cameo appearance in the Sum 41 music video for Makes No Difference. DMX dropped his debut album, It's Dark and Hell Is Hot. It shot straight to the top of the charts and sold millions of copies. He followed it up with more hit albums like Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, and Then There Was X. His gritty lyrics and raw energy resonated with fans all over the world. Now, back in the 1990s, when the streets of New York were pulsing with the beats of hip-hop, there were 3 big names making waves: DMX, Jay-Z, and J. Rule. They were like a trio of firecrackers, exploding onto the scene with their rhymes and rhythms. But as the saying goes, too much heat can cause an explosion, and that's exactly what happened. DMX, Jay-Z, and J. Rule joined forces to form a crew called M Inc. They were tight like brothers, but as we all know, even siblings can end up in a fight. Trouble brewed between DMX and Jay-Z like a storm gathering in the sky. Rumors flew like sparks in the wind, saying that DMX felt some kind of way about Jay-Z. Some folks said it all started with a rap battle back in the day. DMX didn't take too kindly to Jay-Z's style, and that set things off like a firecracker on the 4th of July. The tension between them was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. DMX didn't hold back, throwing shade at Jay-Z in interviews, calling him out for allegedly biting his style. It was like a verbal boxing match, with DMX landing punch after punch. He even dropped a diss track called They Want War, sending shots straight at Jay-Z. But Jay-Z, he kept his cool, never directly responding. It was like a game of cat and mouse, with DMX trying to bait him into a fight. But time has a funny way of cooling things down. Years went by and DMX found himself behind bars. While he was locked up, a peace offering came his way from the big boss of M Inc., Irv Gotti. He wanted to bury the hatchet between DMX and Ja Rule, and DMX was all for it. When DMX finally walked free in 2005, he was ready to put the past behind him. He said, "All right, Gotti, let's do it." But even though DMX was willing to let bygones be bygones, the feud with Jay-Z still smoldered in the background. In fact, right up until the end, DMX was itching for a showdown with Jay-Z. He even threw down the gauntlet on Instagram, saying he wanted to face off with Jay-Z in a rap battle on Versus. It was like he had unfinished business, a score to settle before he could rest easy. But fame had its downside too. DMX struggled with legal issues and addiction throughout his career. He took breaks from music to focus on his personal life, but he always came back stronger. But it wasn't all bright lights and fame for him. He had a rough start, getting hooked on drugs when he was just a teenager. Some say it all started when his buddy tricked him into smoking a joint laced with crack. Now, DMX had his struggles. He tried to get clean a bunch of times, going to rehab over and over again, but the streets had a hold on him, and he kept slipping back into his old ways. One night in 2016, things took a scary turn. They found DMX passed out in a parking lot in Yonkers. It took a shot of Narcan to bring him back from the brink. Some folks said he was munching on some powder before he went down, but the cops didn't find anything on him. DMX claimed it was just an asthma attack, but who knows? Then, in 2021, another close call. He had a heart attack at home, maybe from another drug overdose. They rushed him to the hospital, but it wasn't looking good. His organs were failing, and he was barely hanging on. His manager said he was in a coma, and it didn't seem like he was coming back. His manager, SRC, and Loud Records founder Steve Rifkind stated Simmons was comatose and that he was set to undergo tests to determine his brain's functionality, and his family will determine what's best from there. On the morning of April 9, 2021, Simmons lost functionality in multiple essential organs, reportedly his liver, kidneys, and lungs, and was pronounced dead shortly after, at age 50. It was revealed on July 8th by the Westchester County Medical Examiner's Office that Simmons's official cause of death was a coke-induced heart attack. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. DMX's journey came to an end, leaving behind a legacy of raw talent and unbridled passion. And though the feud with Jay-Z may never see its final chapter, one thing's for sure: DMX left an indelible mark on the streets of New York, turning it into chaos with his electrifying presence and unmatched lyrical prowess. In 2021, DMX released his posthumous album, Exodus, through Def Jam Recordings. It was a bittersweet moment for his fans, knowing that he was no longer with us but still hearing his voice through his music.